I do auricular points on, or ear points on every single patient, every single one. I remember reading some time ago that there's a whole map of the body on the ear. And there is just this direct connection to the body part or the organ that you can affect by using auricular acupuncture. And I love that to further support what I'm doing with the points that I'm doing over the body. So I'm auricular, just all of it. So those are my favorite points.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing. And Rhonda, your smile just came through. That's how you got nominated to be next. It's the first thing I seen when I started looking at people. So tell us a little bit about you, why you became an acupuncturist, and 1 or 3 of your favorite points or helpful tips and tricks with Chinese medicine.
Sure. I'm Dr. Rhonda Coleman, DAOM, and I am from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am a cross-culture kid, so I'm first-generation American. I got into the healing arts mainly because of my martial arts practice. So I am currently in my 22nd year of an Afro-Brazilian art form called capoeira. And as a capoeirista, I started teaching classes. I started out very early on as a dancer and performer. And so as I started incorporating the capoeira more, I noticed a lot of people were getting injured all of the time. And so I started out doing personal training and then group fitness to try and teach people how to use their bodies in a more effective and less harmful way. And then that led me into massage therapy. I was just naturally touching people and stretching them anyway. And so I went into massage therapy. And I should have started out with that. I love to learn. And I'm one of those people that I hate to say I don't know. And so if someone asks me something and I don't know, I'm going to make sure that I can never have to say I don't know again. And so people were asking me questions about what they should eat, what other kinds of supplements or things like that that could help them as I was working with them. And I didn't have the answers. And so I decided to go to school for dietary nutrition. And it was in that program that I was introduced to traditional Chinese medicine. There was a complementary and alternative medicines survey class. And as I started reading all of these different practices like naturopathic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, chiropractic medicine, I was like, oh my gosh, these sound great. And then I got to traditional Chinese medicine and it talked about internal medicine diagnoses and the use of herbal medicine, something I was very familiar with growing up with my family. And it was everything that I never knew existed that I wanted to know. And so in the middle of my nutrition program, I decided that I was going to transfer to a traditional Chinese medicine school. Mind you, totally ignorant to the huge piece that was acupuncture, because the way that it was written, the paragraph on TCM was extremely long, talked a lot about internal medicine diagnosis and herbs, and there was this little small piece that talked about acupuncture along with moxibustion and cupping. So I went into the school and was completely shocked when I learned that we were going to be sticking each other for the next 3 years. I hate needles. Or at least, hypodermic, like I hate getting shots. I hate having blood drawn. And so here I am, a person that uses needles in my practice, but I think it really helps me to calm other people. And I use this statement that I'm not going to stick you. I'm going to lovingly place this metal device into certain points on your skin in order to improve your current health status. My favorite point to use is yin tang. I love that people naturally go here when they're stressed, when they have pain, when they are dealing with things like a forgotten memory of something that they need to remember. And so I think it's just an innate point, if that makes sense. And so it's one of my favorite ones to use, and I love explaining to people how it's directly in front of the pineal gland, and that the pineal gland is responsible for melatonin in the body, and so it makes sense that this point helps relax you and treat insomnia and things like that. I like educating people, and so that point has a lot behind it to educate on, and so it's my favorite point.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. Mama FY, with the megawatt smile at the end, she managed to like keep it under wraps. So please tell us a little bit about you and why you became an acupuncturist and one of your favorite points, tips, or tricks.
I actually was on my way to medical school, Western Medical School, when I got sick. I was applied and got into Western Medical School, but got waitlisted and got really sick sometime like in the winter, and was sick. I lost my hearing out of my left ear, had been on antibiotics, and went to one of my primary care physician, Western doc, and they were like, well, you know, tough luck. Maybe you'll get your hearing back, but you know, the antibiotics didn't work, so you're just stuck. And a girlfriend of mine that I was teaching with, I was a middle school math and science teacher, pre-med, but she was dating an acupuncturist, and she had just finished the NADA program. And so she harassed me literally for 2 months saying, you know, you really should try acupuncture. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. I'm like, that's some quackery. You know, I've done research at the medical school. This not proven. And so finally we were at the end of the year, and we had a school gathering, and her boyfriend, an acupuncturist, was there, and she's like, he's got needles, won't you? And I'm like, okay, listen, if you just get off my case, I'll let him work on me. So my first treatment was at a picnic table. 5 minutes into the treatment, I could hear and was like, whoa, what just happened? And I mean, all this stuff for the next 24 hours was coming out of my head. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what happened. So I'm asking him, I'm like, what did you do to me? How does this work? And he gave me, I was actually on my way back home to Ghana. I'm first generation Ghanaian American. My mother's from Ghana, my dad's from the States, but I was going home, and another friend who had also completed the auricular class gave me a book to read. It's A Layman's Guide to Acupuncture. It's written by Yoshio Manaka. And it was the perfect thing for me to read because I had had this amazing experience. But that particular book breaks it down from a quantum physics standpoint. And I had been a chemistry major for most of my undergrad. So I'm like, I get this. Because once you start looking at quantum physics, I'm like, all of this is possible. You talk about energy. I'm like, I can get with that. And I decided that, you know, if they don't call my number for medical school, because I was number 9 on the wait list, then I'll do acupuncture school, and then, you know, I'll do a year, and then I'll know enough, and I will go to medical school. They got to number 8. So I would have been number 1 for the following year. And it's funny how the universe works, because honestly, had I been called, I would have never done this. I needed the experience. So I looked at a couple of schools, ended up going to a school in Florida that was recommended to me, interviewed, found a job, found an apartment in 3 days. And, you know, you start with observation in addition to your didactic classes. And I was working full-time, going to school full-time. And I was like blown away. I mean, the things that I was seeing in clinic, for me, I needed to see that efficacy. And, you know, because a lot of you all are practitioners, I was being blown away because I knew from my experience working in the hospitals that there was nothing I could offer for a lot of these patients as a Western medicine physician. I could offer them a prescription, or I could say, you know, you kind of got to live with this. Maybe I was really into nutrition, had been since I was younger, but, you know, maybe we could change your diet on some things, but it just blew me away. So 2 months into school, 3 months when I needed to send in my confirmation, I was like, nope, I'm doing this because this is amazing. And everybody thought I was crazy. My parents called, every family member that my parents told called me saying, you are crazy. Why are you not going to medical school? And I'm like, I am going to medical school. I'm going to Chinese medical school. And they're like, well, you have your education degree, so we know that you won't be homeless if it doesn't work out. So fortunately now they're all like, we're so glad you went to acupuncture school. But yeah, for me, it was the best decision that I ever made. I mean, I love what I do. I've been practicing for 22 years. I tell people I still look forward to going to work in the morning. That is a real blessing to be able to love what you do and to be able to help empower people. So I do a lot of patient education. I think that many times we often have abdicated responsibility for our health, particularly sometimes in our community where we often are so disempowered by the traditional system and don't feel cared for. So when people come to my office, I'm like, this is a safe space. I need to love up on you too, because that is part of what is missing. So for me, that is a huge one, a huge thing that helps to inspire me. My favorite point is probably Do 20, Governor Vessel 20. It was one because I used to teach middle school math and science. So I was always trying to incorporate acupuncture and acupressure points into my classroom so I could reinforce the meaning. And middle school, you have 40, 45, oh my gosh, my largest class was 45 middle school students. So I'd say moose ears, find your point. Okay, so everybody press their points. And it's amazing how much that helps to kind of energetically calm everything down. So that's still my favorite point. And, you know, people look at me crazy because I do the moose ear thing, but then nobody ever forgets the point. They're like, I need to do the moose ear point. Yep, you do. So that's still my favorite point.
I just want to jump in and say I was a middle school math teacher. Before I went to Bastyr to start ND school, I was a 7th grade. And I wish I had some acupuncture knowledge then. Yes.
Some acupuncture in my younger years would have totally been useful. Thank you for the moose ears. I might start doing that with some kids, you know, especially because I'm the spend the night house. I have a single child. And so we homeschool, so I frequently have to import children because otherwise my child will crawl all over me. And so I think when they get a little rambunctious from now on, I'm going to remember, everybody do your moose ears. You know, they're still young enough that this is going to work and be interesting. And I am the kooky mom that makes them eat weird vegetables that taste good. So this will definitely work, right? So I haven't yet answered why I became an acupuncturist, and it was actually medical racism that led me to being an acupuncturist. I started my undergrad at Morgan State University over in Baltimore. The only people not from Baltimore say Baltimore. And I was in the engineering program, and I was doing it because like I could do science. I didn't necessarily like science, but I was really good at science. It was fascinating to an extent. And I ended up at the hospital one day after eating some ground beef that had been in my fridge probably a week, possibly longer. And it was Christmas Eve, and I told myself, it's okay, I'll just cook it really good. And I don't have any money right now because I was a broke student. And I knew the next day I would get all the food in the world because, you know, Christmas. And everyone feeds the poor little college student, right? So I was coming home with all my leftovers that I could stick in the fridge, and I was going to be straight, so I got my next paycheck. And less than an hour after eating said poison that I fed myself, I knew I was not going to be okay. I was really sick. And within 2 hours, I was incredibly sick. And inside of 3 hours, I had to crawl to a telephone to dial for 911 to come get me out of the house because there was stuff going in different directions and I was in pain and everything was not okay. And then when I got to the hospital, being a young Black female that went to a party school, forget the fact that I'm on an academic scholarship for the hardest program they have up there. They just like, oh, well, you know, you're probably pregnant. I'm like, I'm not pregnant. And if I'm pregnant, we giving birth right now because I don't have time to do the things that are required for you to get pregnant. And then after the urinalysis came back negative, they did blood tests. And after the blood test came up negative, they did an intravaginal wand. And I understand. Bye, honey. And after they did the intravaginal wand, because it's like, well, maybe you have an ectopic pregnancy and that's why it's just not showing up on all the tests. And I'm like, I am not pregnant. They then changed their diagnosis because they found a cyst on an ovary while they were up there digging around for a baby that wasn't in there. And it's like, oh, well, then you probably have an STD. And I'm like, I've had cysts my whole life. Since I started with my monthly flow, I've had cysts. And that's not news to me. And I have food poisoning. And I know that this is food poisoning. Like, and there's a huge difference between my uterus and my stomach. I know the difference. Thanks. And so then they proceeded to run every STI test that there was. They were concerned that I had some weird gonorrhea that was going around the college towns that was untreatable, or some strange tropical disease, because we had a lot of immigrants in the Baltimore area. And then when nothing came up positive, because they found a couple of white blood cells and I had this cyst, they decided that they would admit me for a pelvic inflammatory infection. But since they couldn't figure out what was causing the infection, they called a specialist, Dr. Lee. So Dr. Lee came in on Christmas Day to look at the girl who had the weird disease that they could not diagnose. And Dr. Lee took a look at all the plumbing. He's just like, great, you have a cyst, you have a yeast infection. That's nice, but that's not what's wrong with you. Why are you here? And I told him the story of how I'd eaten this really old ground beef and I was deadly within 3 hours of eating it. And he's like, did you tell the admitting people this story? I was like, yes, I did. Did anybody hear you? I was like, yes, they did. And they still admitted you for pelvic inflammatory disease? He was like, yes, they did. At which point, Dr. Lee began to curse vehemently in whatever language he spoke. At everything and everybody. He was slamming things. Again, this man is a specialist and he was called in on Christmas Day to come look at some mysterious disease. He was hot. And he then called people in and tests were taken and stool samples and medications were changed and all the things. And then he gave me a card and he's just like, look, I understand your cycles probably suck for you. That's a really bad cyst that you have going on there, but I'm going on vacation and I'm not going to be back until February. So if you want help with that, then come see me. And I'm like, yeah, they give me the birth controls pill already. It doesn't do anything. He's just like, I'm not going to give you any birth controls. I have a solution for you, but I'm not coming back to February. Here's my card. Of course, I lost the card. And then I found it one day cleaning up, being the student that I was. And I went to Dr. Lee and he's like, well, I have some Chinese herbs for you. You have to go to this magical Hogwarts store that apparently I have passed every day for 2 years and never saw. And I got this random tar, y'all. It was nasty. It was like this thick, lumpy, licoricey. It was really nasty and it was really hard to choke this stuff down, but I choked it down. And in less than 30 days, the first cycle that I had was markedly better. I was like, okay, let's keep drinking the tar, right? And so it was nasty, and I'm still not compliant with herbs. To this day, I am not compliant with herbs. I'm terrible. And I got down as much of the nasty tar as I could. And the second cycle was so amazing. I went from needing Percocet for every cycle and a towel. I couldn't go to class for my cycles. I needed to be on a towel. To not needing a towel and not needing Percocet. And I was like, this is amazing. And so third cycle went in, I didn't have any PMS. I had no pain. I had no nausea. I had no severe mood swings. I had no nothing. And I was sitting in class why do I feel like I just wet my pants? and you know, ran to the bathroom to figure out what is wrong with me. And it was like, oh my God, my cycle started, and I had no warning, I had no pain, I had no nothing. And so I had a 3-month checkup, because in Chinese medicine, you guys may not know, but we track your cycles in threes. Like, we say wait 3 cycles to see what changes, and if the changes are going to be permanent. And I went back and I'm like, holy cat, what's in the tar? He's like, oh, it's Chinese medicine. I'm like, cool. Like, I've studied all this other stuff and none of it has worked up until this point. How do I learn that? And he's like, oh, well, I learned in China, so I don't know what you're going to do. I was like, I can learn to speak Chinese, I think. And for the record, I cannot learn to speak Chinese. I had to take medical Chinese in school, and it sucked. I can't do the tones. Even though I do music, I cannot hear a tonal language. And so I ran into another mentor who told me about Bastyr. And then it was just like, I never rethunk going to engineering. I never thought about computer science again. Like, I needed to learn the magical things called herbs. And so I've been an acupuncturist now for over 11 years. I'm still not like the master herbalist, but I am the master tiny magic sword slinger. And unlike beautiful Rhonda Coleman, I don't use the loving and kind words. I crack a lot of jokes because people are horribly uncomfortable. So I say things like, I'm a professional stabologist and I'm gonna wield this tiny magic sword and everything's gonna get better. I might electrocute you, possibly set you on fire and attack you with these suction cups, but you're gonna love it and it won't be a felony when I leave. And everyone does that, they laugh, they're like, what? It's like, don't worry, it's gonna be great. And just, you know, for the record, no matter what I just said, I don't believe in torture. I don't live in that Lamborghini you do, so I can't scratch the paint. Just make sure that I'm being respectful of your temple. So my favorite point is, I'm very much like Mama Sophia over there, and I like ear points, and I'm doing a lot of telemedicine, so I have body parts in my house, which also sounds like a felony, but it's not when I do it. I like this bottom point down here in the lower concha, and there's a series of points right here. There's like lung 1, there's heart, and there's lung 2, but I just tell people, like, forget even trying to find a point at this point. Like, it just needs you to pull and push on your ear, like push down in there, give it a little love, and take some deep breaths. And I also like to explain why that is. And that is because your vagus nerve is in there. And if you put any amount of pressure on there and you combine that with big belly breaths, what happens is you're triggering the parasympathetic response. You're triggering the body to go into a state of calm, even if it doesn't necessarily want to be there. And it's something that anybody can do wherever you are. I'm a mom, and there are plenty of times I'm just like holding my ear like, little person, go clean your room. For the upteenth time, or you're sitting in traffic and, you know, you just had something weird, like this big truck that just came by, or the person who cut you off, and you got to get to a client. And so I'm just holding my ear and I'm taking a deep breath, because I know that this combination of things will help me to get into my rest zone. So that's my favorite point, and that's why I'm an acupuncturist. So that went way faster than I anticipated, but I have more questions. But before I do that, is there any questions from the audience? Anybody want to talk to your favorite? There are actually a few more acupuncturists in this room than the 4 you came to see. Just FYI, you'll be seeing them again. I won't call them out right now. Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah, Look at the person who's trying to hide. No,
you didn't.
Rachel, I did not find out. Yeah, you see somebody? There's a few more of them in here too. They're really hiding. Some of them are hiding under their real names, as opposed to the names that we know them on Facebook. But that's okay. We're going to be doing this hopefully every week, so that we can get more and more of these lovely faces up here. I did not ever find out what the name of the formula is. I have some ideas what the name of the formula was, but it was written in kanji. So yeah, that's all I got for you. And so there was a really good question, which I am totally okay with answering. What has been some of the most memorable experiences you had as an acupuncturist? You know, it's really funny that you asked that question, Ina, because that was one of the next questions. That, and of course, current events, because, you know, current events. All right, so instead of moving on to the depressing side of current events, would all of us please take a moment to say, what was one of your most memorable experiences with this medicine?
For me, it has been getting folks pregnant. That, folks that have been like, this is it. After this, we're going to give up. Like this is the last go round with IVF, with IUI. This is just it. And they say, I want to try this. And I'm like, okay, this is what it's going to take. And, they're game and they do it. And so far I have one baby that's named after me, which is amazing. Their middle name is my first name. And so that's really exciting. But that has been the most memorable experience thus far, is just being able to give that to folks that have, lost hope, and they've been trying everything and spending a lot of money, and they come to me and it's so the simplicity of it in its application, but the profound effect that it has on the body has just been amazing. Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll go next. There are a lot of them. I mean, I think that's one of the things that when you're seeing like a ton of, I have a fairly busy practice, but it's one of the things that, especially when you get really difficult cases, that when you have successes, that you're like, yes, I know what I'm doing. But I think for me, actually it goes back to that, because I do get, actually do get a lot of referrals from a number of physicians. And one of the physicians says, if I have no idea what's going on, I just send them to you, because which I'm like, that is not fair. Like, it's really not fair. But one person in particular had been a patient of his, and I was working at a clinic for uninsured and underinsured. I was the integrative medicine piece, but this woman had been sick for like 3 years and had like horrible loose stools, and they had done all these tests and nothing came up. They had tested her for parasites, supposedly nothing came up. And she was just miserable. Like, she had to go on disability. She was, down to almost 100 pounds and, could barely keep up weight. And so she came in and was telling me the story, and I was, just started asking about when all this started, yada, yada. And she was like, no one asked me that. I was like, well, that's where we have to start. So what happened before this started? Let's go back to, the beginning. So she told me the whole story, and I was like, I'm pretty sure you have a parasite. And I was like, we probably need to go to one of the less common labs to actually do a stool test. So I'll talk to your physician so he can order it. But it was one of those things. I'm like, I'm going to give you some herbs. I'm going to have you do, I told her how to make congee, gave her some herbs that I knew were anti-parasitic, just because I do go back and forth to Ghana. I have a lot of experience dealing with particularly tropical diseases, parasitic diseases. So came up with a herbal formula to give her one treatment. She came back the next week and was like, I was able to eat. Like, I did not have diarrhea. She was like, I had loose stools the first day, a little bit, but they were still bound. But she was like, that's it. Like, she was like, your herbs are like swamp water, and I don't know what kind of witch's brew you've given me, but I will drink it. Can I have some more, please? But it kind of set the tone, because then she went and talked to everybody who worked at that clinic. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, can I get an appointment? But I was so happy because she was able to pick up weight. She was able to start caring for her daughter again, but it was just so profound. for her. And, you know, it was like, and then the doctor's like, oh, you're brilliant. I'm like, I'm really not. It just, this was actually simple in Chinese medicine. It's just, I have a different tool set than you do. But it's great if it makes me look like I'm really brilliant, but I'm pretty, you know, I have people that I've studied under who've been practicing for 50 years when I was in school. And when you practice on, you know, when you're following somebody who's been practicing for 50 years, the amount of knowledge, particularly this one doctor that I studied under, was just, you know, incredible. And like, you know, people are like, you're the master. I'm like, no, I'm really not. Like, I'm still a baby. I'm still a baby in this field. So.
You are brilliant, though. Yes. My most memorable moment was one that I work on a lot. So I actually started a nonprofit because in my doctoral program, I was doing my research on why African Americans were not using alternative medicine, and specifically acupuncture. And part of what really pushed me to that was all of the information that says that Black people have the highest incidence of this disease and that disorder and die from this and that. And these are the same conditions that are helped by preventive medicine, but we are least likely to use preventive medicine. And so I do a lot of education for people around that. And my mom was like my textbook person. Well, you're not sticking me with no needles, you know, and I don't know if that works with Christianity. I don't know if I should be, you know, doing that. And, you know, all of those different reasons why people from our community are like, no, acupuncture is not for me. And so it took a lot of coaxing to get my mother interested in what I was doing. When I was in school, one of the first things that she said when I was telling her about herbs was, says brujeria, you know, she's like, that sounds like witchcraft. And I was like, Mom, we grew up doing, like, you talk about go get the lemongrass, go in the yard and get this or that. Like, it's what we've always done. It's what Grandpa does, you know? And so she kind of calmed down on that. So anyway, fast forward to this incident, she had a rotator cuff surgery and her arm was really bothering her and it was getting stiff because she wasn't moving it. She was not exercising it at all after the surgery. She was just kind of very protective. And so it started getting really stiff. And I was saying, you know, I could help you if you want to let me do some needles. And she was like, And one day she was in so much pain and she had taken the ibuprofen and whatever else her doctor had prescribed. And I said, I can just do some on your ears. And she was like, okay, fine. I'll let you do my ears. Sorry, my son is trying to grab my attention. Lost my train of thought. Yes, so I said, let me just put some in your ears. And so right before I put the first one, I said, well, the ears are like the most sensitive area. So, so if you can take this, you know, the rest are a lot easier. So I put a couple for shoulder and for tranquilizer, couple of different pain points on her ear. And the first one that I did, she was like, ow, and almost slapped my hand. So I had one of those, don't hit me, mama, kind of reactions. And she said, okay, it's a little bit better now. And I said, can I continue? And she let me continue. And she let me put some like in her shoulder. And then I don't remember where I put the other one, but after I was done, she was like, you're never doing that again. Like, that was painful. You're not doing it again. And I said, okay, you know, we tried. And about 20 or 30 minutes later, she did something and she was like, my shoulder's not hurting. And I said, see, I told you it worked. And she was like, you know, moving around. Then the next day she woke up, she said, you know, my shoulder's still not hurting. And I said, that's good. You know, that means the acupuncture is working. And she was like, yeah, okay. And then the next day after that, she was like, that really worked. My shoulder is not hurting. And I said, yeah, Mom, I told you. And she was so happy and she's walking around. And so then 2 weeks later, she said it was starting to bother her a little bit again. And so I said, can I use these studs this time? Because then it'll last a little bit longer. I said, but it's a little more pinchy. So I was using the ASP for the acupuncturist. I don't know who's not an acupuncturist, but they are semi-permanent needles. They last for several days. They're metallic, they're magnetic, and so you can continue the treatment for longer. So I did those. She really didn't like me after that, but she remembered that the first time it worked really well, so she didn't complain too much. And she had gone to work and everyone thought that she had new piercings. And so she came back and she was saying, oh, these are so cool. Everyone thinks that I have new ear piercings, and I have to explain to them that it's part of acupuncture. And so fast forward, now it's been maybe 4 or 5 weeks since I did the first treatment. Her shoulder has not been bothering her. She's now telling me stories about being at work and telling people how they need to go and get acupuncture for all of the different things that they're sharing with her that is bothering them. And now it's been about 4 years since when I did that treatment. And anytime she talks to anyone, she tells them how her daughter's an acupuncturist and how they need to have acupuncture for every single one of their ailments. And so that is just like, it was really an honor for me to be able to treat my mother and to help her and to change her mind about something and allow her the space to grow in that way and to look at things that seem uncomfortable in a different way.
Wow, those are some awesome and amazing stories. Thank you, ladies, for sharing. Like many of you, I've been in practice for a while and I've definitely got some cool stories, but I think one of my coolest stories is a client that I still have, and I'm a mobile acupuncturist. So most of the clients that I have are like, I'm a last ditch effort. I'm going to someone's home typically because they're in a lot of pain, they have mobility issues, they can't get out of their house, or they're just busy, right? And it's just nice to not go deal with traffic after having an acupuncture appointment. You can just sit in your bed and sleep and chill. I actually tuck people in. I love what I do. I love tucking people in. When's the last time you had that as an adult? Like never, right? So I have a client that I got a call for that has essentially a non-functioning liver. And when I got the call, it was, there is no pain medicine that is helping this person. And he can't really travel. We need you to come in, see if you can make the pain better. They wanted to do a cadaver liver transplant. And if you know in the medical community, when you get that far down the list, as opposed to having like waiting for a matching live donor, it's bad. And so I met this really sweet kid, and I didn't think I could do anything for him. I didn't think I was going to be able to help his pain. I didn't think he was going to make it 6 more months. Like I didn't think I could do anything whatsoever for him. But I saw him twice a week for a while, and the pain got better. And the cool thing was that not only did his pain get better, like his liver is trying to function. It's not functioning perfectly, but he is functioning to the point where we're no longer talking about him having a cadaver liver. They were able to find a donor, and his numbers are stable. Like it's bad, but it's a stable bad. Right? And like it all started after the acupuncture. And so like now I typically see him about once a week, and I keep him stable. And the thing that I'm going to cry, like the thing that I really love about this story is that up until this point, this young man that is in his 20s, he had not been able to leave his parents' home because he was so sick, and he could not live by himself. And he had this really sweet lady that he was dating, and I know it was really hard for her because he was rapidly deteriorating into nothingness. He was Simpson yellow. He was very wan. He was very sick, very fatigued, very nauseous, very everything all the time. And I think I've been seeing them for, 2 years now. And like now he lives in his own place. Him and the girl have gotten engaged, and I can't wait for the wedding. And, and his liver is still functionally stable. And that's in spite of the fact that with COVID, like I stopped seeing everybody. It was like, no, I'm going to stay home. Thanks. And I didn't see him for a while. And his numbers are still stable and still functional after all of this acupuncture. And this is no herbs, this is straight needles, like, the whole way. And so if you'd have told me before this person that I could get somebody's liver working from just needles, I'd have been like, I doubt it. You probably need some herbs, maybe with some back shu points. Those are the points near your, on your, right off your spine on your back. You know, maybe with some E-stem at the right frequency and hertz, and some magic even from acupuncture standpoints. Like maybe we could have gotten some increased functionality out of, you know, out of this individual's liver, but like he's great. He's, you know, really typically doing well. And it is like one of my biggest success stories. And every time that I see him, it's like my kid. He's a lot younger than I am. And I'm always so happy to see how my kid is doing, and that my kid is great, and that his liver is great. And then, you know, it's really funny, as his liver doctors are like, that's not possible. Like your liver doesn't go back to functionality. And it's like, well, it's working now. So the only thing that's new is me stabbing him twice a week. And, you know, that's it, because I wasn't allowed to give him anything. Like I couldn't give him any herbs. I couldn't give him nothing, in spite of the fact that they have him on enough painkillers, right? Like it was an issue. And that was like the big reason why I came there, because he was on so many painkillers that he was hooked, right? And we had to get him off, or at least we had to really get him off the painkillers before they would even consider him for the cadaver transplant, because they, you know, you'll jack up whatever you get if you're taking a bunch of Percocet and oxycodone and everything else. So he's drug-free. He's been drug-free for over a year now. I typically see him once a week, and we just do his maintenance treatments, and we figure out what needs to be addressed. And he's doing really, really amazing. And he's like really one of my favorite success stories. Like I wrote a big old case study about him when I was getting my doctorate, and people were like, really? I was like, yeah, really, like needles, man, who knew? So, and I think of that, you know, particularly as we're talking about the racial health disparities gap. Like, I wish everybody, racial health disparities gap, I wish everybody could learn acupuncture. I wish everybody could learn acupressure. You know, that's one of the reasons why as these panel of experts and these amazing people come up, I want them to, you know, talk about their favorite point and why that is, so that the folks who are not acupuncturists can go home with a little something or that they can do for themselves. So we are almost out of time. And again, this still went a little faster than I anticipated. I don't know if there's any final thoughts from any of our fantastic, amazing, stupendously, superbly excellent panel of guests. I don't know if there are any extra questions from our extra fabulous, magnificent audience. But let's go ahead and suck up the last 9 minutes that we have together. Anyone? Don't leave me hanging, y'all.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Mama Wilson.
How are you all?
Good,
of course,
good.
You're wonderful. I know everyone's needed. My question is, where are you all practicing? Where are you located? Because I know where you're from and stuff, but where are you located? Just want to know.
Thank you. I forgot that question came through. Thank you for reminding me. So I'm in Sacramento. I'm actually a Sacramento native, even though I was a military brat and I grew up here, there, and everywhere. My first practice was actually in Baltimore, and my next practice is here in sunny Sacramento.
And I practice in St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm in downtown Silver Spring, Maryland.
I'm currently in Aurora, Colorado.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, if you haven't been keeping up with social media, because like there's only so much of it that you can ingest at any one time. For these kinds of questions of like, you know, where are we? We are only like 1.7, 1.5% of the total acupuncture population in the country. We are a tiny minority of people. And so there is a website. It is the blackacupuncturist.com website. And I'll go ahead and type that into the chat. Maybe, because what y'all don't know is that I can't type. There we go. I think I spelled that right. Good. So there is oh, did I send that privately? Hold up, let me try that again. Excuse me. I might have started off with electrical engineering and a minor in computer science, but let me tell you, that was never, ever gonna be what I did the rest of my life. I am not a computer wizard. And in fact, I can actually make electronics stop working if I'm having a bad day. Like, I radiate so much electromagnetic energy that stuff shuts down around me. Watches stop, cell phones stop, computers stop. It's really funny. So there is a website for us. There is a www.blackacupuncturist.com. We are working on building up an association so that we can continue to disseminate information to marginalized communities, particularly the African-American community. But good information is good information, regardless of who and where you are or what's going on. Anyway, one more maybe before we go? No? Y'all just want to hear me talk?
Find an acupuncturist.
Find an acupuncturist? What? Did I miss something?
Yeah, just find an acupuncturist.
Find an acupuncturist.
Find somebody. It is, you know, again, it's just the simplicity of it. It is the ease of it that I think makes it so much more powerful. And it's perfect, especially, you know, we didn't get into current events, but especially for this time in dealing with stress. And we all, you know, how stress impacts the immune system, how stress impacts the sleep, which impacts the immune system. You know, so things are moving into phase 2, phase 3, things are opening back up. So we need to do all that we can to make sure that we are protecting ourselves. And one of the ways I think we can do that is through acupuncture, the use of acupuncture in Chinese herbs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mama Rhonda, Mama Ina, I felt like both of you were about to say something.
No, you go for it. Okay. This might be a longer question, but well, first of all, just thank you guys. So this has been so amazing to hear from all of you, and it's just such a beautiful thing. But I was just wondering, why do you think it's why is it such a small percentage of like the acupuncture community are from the Black community, or just in general? Like I've been looking at different places, and it's a very white thing, which is very surprising to me. So my grandmother was an acupuncturist and traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, and I am very much in the Western medicine, but then because of chronic illnesses, I sort of went over and wanted to learn more. It's a very white thing. So I was just wondering, like, why do you guys think that's the case?
You know, the short answer, honestly, is just racism. You know, it's hard to go to school in general. There's no attachment to the history of acupuncture use with African Americans in the United States. Like, people don't know about Matula Shakur. They don't know about the Black Panthers. They don't know about Dr. Tobin Smalls. They don't know about Lincoln. There's iatrophobia. We don't like needles. We don't, you know, we're terrified that you're going to do something to us. Enough of that. It's cost prohibitive, right? It is a long question, and you know, maybe we'll address that on a different panel. It's a super long question, and in fact, I did a whole hour on this question. But I have 3 other beautiful women up here, and I think they have some things that they want to add too.
I would say I think the exposure is huge. For most people that I meet, they're like, you're the first Black acupuncturist I've ever met. Mm-hmm. In a lot of cases, especially in the Midwest, I may be the first acupuncturist, period, that they've ever met. That is often the case. One of the things that I do is because I used to be a teacher, so I do try to go to schools to expose students to it, to help to normalize it, just because I think it's a field that not a lot of people know about. And to really try to encourage other people. I mean, had I known about it because I was 6 when I decided I wanted to be a doctor, and the only version of doctor that I knew was a Western medicine physician. So I think now, like, I've had 2 patients who've become acupuncturists now, and that just like warms my heart to a whole nother one. And one of them I started seeing when she was in middle school. So it's just, you know, like, a lot of it is we just gotta be out there too.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes this so wonderful, is that people get to see us and know that we exist. And I was called a unicorn. You know, I was in Seattle. That's what me and Tanisha went to Bastille. We were there at the same time. So that's how we know one another. And I remember being there had post-graduation working at the university, and a young Black lady, woman came in, and she's like, "Wait a minute, you're a naturopathic doctor and you're an acupuncturist?" I've never met a Black one of either one of those, and you're both. And she was like, "You are a unicorn. I've never met, a Black female ND, a Black female acupuncturist." And it seemed, I was like, really? I mean, I think it was just because of the people that I was, in school, there wasn't a lot of us, but those were the only Black acupuncturists I knew, right? But I saw them all the time. And so I was like, I know a handful of Black acupuncturists. But that exposure, is, as F was saying, that exposure is key. And one of the things that, in one of the roles that I had in the institution, one of the programs that I would run was, we would bring some middle school age kids to the campus, and they would have a day of natural medicine. So there would be an acupuncture demonstration. They would go into the nutrition kitchen and make healthy snacks and make like alternative, like natural sodas. They would go into the herb garden and pick herbs and work with an herbalist in the herbal, in the herb lab. They had a midwifery experience where midwives talked about, natural childbirth. And so that piece, being involved and being able to expose folks to us, especially Black and brown kids, to this as a possibility for something that they can do is also been something that's been really important to me as well. And doing things like this. So thank you, Tisha and Rhonda, for, putting this together and getting us out here so that people see that we exist, so folks can imitate what they can see.
All right, Mama Rhonda, close it out on anything that you think didn't get covered on that last question from Mama Ina.
Yeah, I would just love to add that the underlying issue that all of you brought up is trust, one of trust. The race comes up because of trust. And I think that a lot of people overlook that impact of systemic racism. People can understand that if a child is bitten by a dog when they're 2 years old, that they have this lifelong fear. Even if they get a pet, like there's this underlying fear that they carry because they remember that they were bit by this dog. Or, if someone gets really sick because they ate strawberries at some point in their life, maybe for the rest of their lives, there's less of a taste for strawberries. If you have bad experiences ongoing with the people that are supposed to be caring for you, then there's going to be some reluctance to go for that care because of trust. And there's a lot in the Black community, there's a lot of mistrust for white faces because of experiences that you have growing up. And as you pointed out, is your name pronounced Ina? Yeah. Acupuncture in this country is predominantly white. And so people have a hard time going to their Western doctor because, usually they're white. The whole system is white. And so there's a mistrust there that might not even be articulated by the person. They might not even be aware that that's where that reluctance is coming from, but it is there. And so when people see a Black person that's doing something, then I've had so many people come up to me and say, I did kind of hear about acupuncture before, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't want to sound stupid and ask questions, but I'll ask you. Like, they say that whole mouthful. I'll ask you the questions. Tell me about this. How does it work? And so there's a comfort that comes in seeing that familiar face that's not even just for Black people. I don't know who did the research, but there's so much research out there that says between teachers and healers that people often feel more comfortable when it's a person of color. Somehow, maybe it's Hollywood, because Hollywood always portrays the Black person as that, woo-woo spiritual being in the movie, that safe place in the movie, that place you go when you need safety. Maybe it's that, I don't know, but there's an underlying trust issue, and that I think is the reason why people don't seek out this practice and also don't go to study it, because those spaces are not ones that feel welcoming when you don't see anyone else that looks like you there.
So thank you to all our beautiful guests that came to join me on our little inaugural launching of Come and Meet your Black Acupuncturist and a little meet and greet, get to know a little bit more about us, get to ask us some questions. Thank you to our guests for participating and coming up with wonderful questions. Please join us next Sunday at 5 o'clock. I will have some more Black acupuncturists for you. I actually have people who are signing up. If my 4 panelists can stay behind as everyone goes on, and please share. I'll put up the recording. I'll make sure that these beautiful ladies have a link to the recording as soon as Zoom processes it. And you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you again.